financial argument. Follow us on YouTube.
Hey everyone, this is Elijah Johnson with FinanceAndLiberty.com, and with us today is Keith Neumeyer, the founder of First Quantum Minerals, founder, CEO, and president of First Majestic Silver, and founder and chairman of First Mining Finance. Keith, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, it's great chatting today, Elijah. Thanks for the opportunity.
All right. Well, I'd first like to discuss about gold and silver. Now, I was wondering, because we haven't had you on before, did you want to discuss a little bit about your perspective on where you see the gold and silver markets in general heading in the future?
Yeah, sure. I do differ a little bit from some other, people that I'm sure you interview or others do. My view on gold and silver. I look at gold as money, and gold, is a competitor to other forms of money on the planet, which is primarily paper money or fiat money. So, like any currency, it's good to have multiple currencies in your portfolio. As far as I'm concerned. Now, in the case of, and then of course, as fiat money is devalued over time, the actual physical metal, which is the true, currency, should go up over time as the other fiat currencies drop. So, that's really why people should be owning gold and have gold as part of their portfolio. Silver, I look at quite a bit different. I know silver has been used in coinage, in the last several thousand years, and but today it's a much different situation. We have silver being used in virtually everything that we do as a human race, and silver has become a very much strategic metal. In other words, we could not survive and do everything that we do today without silver. And some people, or a lot of people, don't really think of silver that way. But this conversation is taking place because of silver. Most everything that we do on a daily basis would not happen without silver. And as we electrify the human race, as we automate and bring in robotics and solar panels and green technologies like electric cars and fuel cell vehicles and you name it, all these applications require more and more silver. And silver is much, much rarer than people think it is.
Now, I'd like to discuss also about your perspective on the gold-silver ratio, because I know you've talked about how the gold-silver ratio is really out of whack right now, and you think that the gold-silver ratio should be should be a lot lower. Right now, it takes, maybe 60 ounces of silver to purchase 1 ounce of gold. But you think it should be more, I think you said more like 9-to-1, like the ratio it's being taken out of the ground?
Well, exactly. And I've read a lot of commentary on rebuttals to what I feel is the real supply-demand fundamentals of the metal. But none of it really makes a lot of sense to me because it's all based on paper. And I don't know how, a paper instrument can override the actual supply fundamentals of anything, and in this case, silver, of course. And sure, today it's the price of silver is influenced dramatically by paper. We trade on a worldwide basis over 1 billion ounces of silver in the form of paper. Yet the mining industry only produces 800 million ounces in an entire year. So, that's a ton of leverage. And, how can that leverage, last when, we are being contacted by actual consumers of metal, trying to buy silver from us. And that would not be happening, in my view, if they could easily just go to the banks and buy the silver. And you're dead on with what you said earlier. We are, for every 1 ounce of silver we're mining, for every 1 ounce of gold that we're mining 9 ounces of silver. And that's down from a few years ago. A few years ago, it was 11-to-1. So this ratio is dropping on a regular basis, and it's getting worse. The silver deficit on an annual basis is not improving.
Now, what is your perspective on when it comes to investing in gold and silver? There are a lot of different forms that people can invest in. They can invest in the physical metal. They can invest in ETFs, exchange-traded funds, that track the price of gold and silver, and they can also invest in mining stocks. What is your perspective when it comes to investing in gold and silver about these different forms of precious metals? What is your perspective about what the best form is?
Well, it really depends what the best form. I guess is it's really subjective, or maybe it's very it's different for every person. And I can't really answer for other people, but I can tell you what I do. It's always nice to have a little bit of metal in your at home. My kids like to look at it. I try to educate them about it, and whenever you decide to open up your safe, if in fact you do have a safe, it's always kind of nice to just see there glittering away, and it's silver or gold, whatever you may have. And so I like to have a small quantity of metal in my possession. This stocks themselves, traditionally do quite well in bull markets, but unfortunately in bear market cycles, they do extremely poorly. And we saw over the last 5 years, stocks like First Majestic Silver, for example, went from a high of $26 a share to a low of $3 a share. So that's pretty devastating to an investor if you bought it at 26 and you had it at 3, and it scares out a lot of people. Whether people have sold those stocks and taking losses. Hopefully they don't. Hopefully they stay on or stay in for the next bull market. But often that's very hard to do, and often it just doesn't happen, and people lose money. But you catch that on the other side. When the bull market is beginning. And exactly that's where we are today. In my view, we're in inning one of this next bull phase that's just starting. And if you buy the right stocks, and I mean the right stocks, it's got to be run by good people. People that have obviously had successes in the past in building multi-billion-dollar companies into and creating real value for shareholders. And there's a few groups out there like that, and so you have to be very focused on the teams of individuals that you're supporting by buying their shares, and also the jurisdiction of the asset. I don't like buying mining stocks with projects in places like Russia or places like China or places like Alaska. Even Alaska is very difficult to get permits, and just different places around the world. You have to think of can this asset that mining company has, can it ever be permitted? Will it ever produce metal, and so on and so forth. Now, some people are going to be less sophisticated than others, and then they may not be able to answer those questions. So they may have to ask other people or ask advisors or whatever that may be. But those are the first two things that you really have to look at when you're buying a mining stock. And a good mining stock will outperform the metal by at least 2 to 3 to 1. We saw silver go from 1350 to 21. So that's added $7. That's let's say a 50% move. 40-50% move from February to July. And our stock, First Majestic Silver, for example, went from a $500 million market cap to a $3.2 billion market cap. So it went up 6 times, and silver had only gone up 40%. So it's that kind of leverage that investors can get when the bull market's actually in place and is moving. So stocks can be great, but also they can be sometimes a little bit hard to own. Just going to your comment, I'm not trying to ramble on too much, but it's a big answer to your question. And just going to ETFs, just as my last comment, there's two kinds of ETFs: ETFs that actually own stocks, and ETFs that own the metal. I would prefer not to own an ETF that owns the metal. I don't think there's really any reason to do it. You might as well just own the physical metal itself. At least you have it in your hand. There's a lot of controversy over whether some of these physical ETFs actually have the metal, and they only move with the metal price anyways. There's no beta. They just move penny to penny or dollar for dollar for every time gold or silver moves. So there's really not much point in owning them. Good equity ETFs like the GDXJ or the GDX, which follow the juniors and the majors, those will move with the price of the stocks, and you will get that extra umph when the metals are moving, and those two ETFs actually move quite well. Either way, both positive, negative, again, just going back to my earlier comment, but they're good, very liquid ETFs, and I would definitely recommend those two ETFs that individuals don't want to do stock picking.
Now, I know you're the founder, CEO, and president of First Majestic Silver. Did you want to discuss a little bit about First Majestic Silver and how it, measures up to the standards you were talking about for mining stocks?
Well, sure. First Majestic, I've been in the business for 34 years or so, and I think I've proven, that I'm a good buyer of assets. Both early on in my career at First Quantum, I wasn't there, after 2000, mind you, but I was there from 92 to 2000 and put together, much of the asset base, or at least the original asset base, I should say, and the management team, and then went off at First Majestic, put it together in 2002. And, I was buying assets, at the depths of the market where no one wanted them. There was no competition. The prices were low. And I picked up quite an interesting portfolio of silver projects. I very much love silver. I love the supply demand fundamentals of the metal. So I wanted to form a silver company. And so I hit Mexico pretty hard and started buying up all these old mines. And people were calling me crazy. What are you doing buying these old Mexican mines and so on and so forth? But my technical guys liked them. They advised me that there's metal there. Obviously, they needed development. They needed money. They needed time. But that was perfect. It was exactly what I'm good at doing. So we put together a portfolio, and over a period of 10 years, we built the second largest silver producer in all of Mexico, which is a pretty good thing considering Mexico is the largest silver producing country on the planet. First Majestic's number 2, and so that's quite the achievement. And we still have a couple of more things to do. We're still going to be building more mines. We've got 6 mines right now, and over the next 3 to 4 years, maybe 3 to 5 years, I expect we'll have our 7th and 8th mine up and running by that period of time, even making us larger than we currently are. So, and we're run by a very dedicated management team that is very focused on building this business. So it's been very exciting, and now that metal prices are starting to move again, it's even getting more exciting.
No, I think it was on the SGT report. I remember an interview. I think it was a couple months ago. I think if I recall correctly, you were saying that First Majestic Silver is pulling silver out of the ground at was it like $10 per ounce? That must be a pretty good profit for the company then.
Well, particularly now, that $10 an ounce, it's around $10 or $11 an ounce. That's the all-in sustaining number. There are other costs that don't show up in that number. So it's just the way mining companies address costs. It's actually a couple of dollars more than that if you included everything, like everything we do as a business. But it's generally speaking, most mining companies, as I said, they don't use that number. But yeah, we're one of the lowest cost silver producers out there. At I can tell you at $13, $14 silver, we stayed alive, but it was a struggle. We did cut our costs down. I think we did a fantastic job cutting our costs down by 50% over the last 4 years, and that was through, unfortunately, a lot of layoffs, and but also through automation. We brought in a lot of software, a lot of technologies, and really tried to make the business efficient and really drove costs down. And then, we started making, we're still making a profit at, fairly low metal prices, and then all of a sudden, the silver price just turns around the way it did, and it's now in the $19 range. So that extra, $6 an ounce for us is huge, because every dollar at our level of business brings in about $18 million in profits in the bottom line. So, $6 is, getting close to, $130, $140 million in profits that hit our bottom line as a result of current metal prices. And I'm expecting silver will continually go higher, over the next 2 to 3 years and hopefully longer. And those profits will just continually increase. And the leverage is pretty amazing.
Now, you were talking about how some people, prefer to have, physical metal on hand, instead of investing in ETFs or exchange traded funds. Now, when it comes to mining stocks, there is kind of a similar situation as if people don't trust the, electronic system, can they still take possession of mining stocks and, for example, First Majestic Silver?
They can, the whole system, unfortunately, is moving away from shareholders actually being able to do that. The trust companies that run all this stuff, which is basically the banks. I shouldn't quite point fingers at the banks, but the trust companies who who actually run all this stuff, it's easier for them to keep all of this information in computers, and they don't like to print out certificates and mail them out. Because if they ever get lost or stolen, or someone passes away and it's just in someone's safe for 20, 30, 40 years, and it's just sitting out there, it's really tough for them, right? And ultimately, it's tough on the public company as well, because we do get phone calls from people saying, "Hey, I had the share certificate 10 years ago and I can't find it. Can you give me another one?" And we can't do that. We just can't give them another one. It's because that share certificate that's sitting out there is money, and it's unless there's ways of getting around it. That you got to get lawyers involved. You got to get a bunch of agreements in place, and you have to buy insurance as well, because if that share certificate ever did show up and a brokerage firm actually accepted it and sold it, you would have two share certificates that were sold in the system, and then that obviously is a problem. So anyways, it creates a huge problem for the industry. So it's easier just for people just to keep the stock in their brokerage firms. I know people don't want to do that in some cases, and they don't want it sitting there for whatever personal reasons they have. You can have, as an alternative, have the share certificate in electronic form, but registered with the trust company, and just have it sit there, and then they'll send you an annual statement whereby you could see it still sitting there, and it's kind of in limbo. And then all of a sudden you could write them a letter and say, please send that electronic share certificate to Bank of America or wherever, and then it'll get deposited into the brokerage firm for you to sell it.
Now, you were also the founder and chairman of First Mining Finance, the gold company First Mining Finance. Did you want to discuss a little bit about this company?
Sure, I'd love to. There's lots of exciting things going on at First Mining Finance. So, it came public very aggressively. This goes back to my earlier comment about buying, assets at the bottom of the market. And, a classic example, we had an extremely bad bear market that lasted for 5 years. Valuations in the mining sector were at stupid levels, and they weren't sustainable. I knew they weren't sustainable. Eventually, the market would turn around. It had to turn around, and 5 years was getting pretty long. It's usually these bear markets don't normally go for that period of time. So I spent almost 2 years putting together First Mining Finance, and it finally came public in April of 2015. And we had a target list of acquisitions that we wanted to go and acquire to build up our gold portfolio focused on Canada. And we started just going out. We started banging on doors and started talking to all the executive teams of all these other mining companies. And we won over many of them, convinced many of them to join forces with us. We're a bigger team, good management team, and then obviously a company that's easily financeable. So it had all the right elements for these other companies to merge with us. And then we ended up taking over 8 companies in a 13-month period from April to May of 2016. Since then, it's been more challenging, because the market's gone up a lot. So, the valuations of some of these targets that we were looking at over the last few years are all much, much higher now. And it's not as, easily, or it's not as easy to go and buy them at these current valuations. So, but what we've accomplished as a company is we now have 28 projects, over around 14 million ounces of gold spread through a half a dozen of those projects. And over the next year, we're going to be advancing them by, unencumbering them, building roads, doing joint ventures, even doing a couple of drill holes in some of them. But in the case of Silver One, they did approach us. This is a new company. They were wanting to form a silver exploration company. And as you probably know, there's very few pure, silver exploration companies out there. So they decided, or they offered us, to purchase First Mining Finance's silver portfolio, which was 3 interesting projects that First Majestic used to own. First Majestic sold them to First Mining Finance because they were just never getting any attention. We weren't drilling them. And First Mining Finance has been looking for a partner. Now this new partner, which is run by some pretty good mining guys, are going to drill it. And, Silver One, we hope, will have obviously success doing that. We know there's metal in the ground on those properties. It's just a matter of, how much metal there is and, if the metal is economic. First Mining Finance got a nice share position in Silver One as a result of the sale of those 3 assets. I agreed to put some money in personally, so I'm a shareholder as well. I'm not involved in day-to-day management or anything like that, but I talk to them occasionally, and I know that they're out there running around looking for other silver projects as well. So I think they have a heck of a shot. So it's definitely one to watch.
Now, as for, obviously our viewers need to do their own due diligence and research for themselves, but in your opinion, do you see right now as a good time to jump into the market, especially with, for example, mining stocks that seem maybe to give a lot of leverage? Right now we're seeing a slight pullback. Silver had, I think, touched, around $20. Now it's 18 something. So do you see right now would be a good time to jump into the market?
It's really, look, the mining sector is extremely volatile, and some people simply cannot handle that volatility, and understandably, because it is sometimes tough. We're getting calls, at First Majestic right now, at First Mining right now, that shareholders have paid prices that are much higher than where the stock's currently trading at, and they think there's something wrong with the company. What's going on? Why is the stock down? What should I do? Should I sell it? Should I buy more? And it's, we can't really tell people, whether to buy or sell our stock, right? It's completely up to them. If they like silver, in the case of First Majestic, it's a great company. And in my view, over the next few years, as the silver price improves, the environment improves, that stock will be a lot higher. But that's my opinion. And First Mining Finance, this is a company that, has 14 million ounces of gold in the ground spread over Ontario, which is one of the best mining jurisdictions on the planet. It's a very unique situation. There's no one that has those kinds of ounces spread over such a tight area within a very mining friendly jurisdiction like that. Those ounces are worth a lot more, in my view, in a combined company as they are today, as they were previously when they're all separated by a bunch of small companies. Our ounces in the ground currently, based on our market cap today, are only about $25 an ounce. So in a normal market, when I mean normal, I mean, going back prior to the previous bear market, ounces in the ground could be trading, in the 7,500 and even higher. I saw, gold ounces trading for much, much higher than that. So, that obviously, if it repeats itself, which obviously I think it's going to, that's why I formed First Mining Finance in the first place, that, we'll see a much, much higher valuation for the current asset base in First Mining Finance. So, I'm bullish on both of them. And for my money, it's a place to be investing. But again, for your listeners, this is an extremely volatile market. First Majestic started 2016 with a $500 million market cap in January. It should have never been there. That was too cheap for that company. It should never have been trading at those valuations. But there was such a hate on the industry that everyone was ignoring it and no one was buying anything. Then all of a sudden the money starts flowing into the sector. And First Majestic's market cap goes to $3.2 billion, goes up 6 times from its lows in January. That's a pretty amazing move when the silver price only went up $6. It went from $13.50 to just touch 21 intraday. So that move, made First Majestic go up 6 times. And that's the kind of leverage that the mining sector can bring investors if they time their investments correctly. And that's often the biggest problem for retail investors. They no one wants to buy when things are red every single day. Like right now, people are looking at the market saying, "Oh, I'm too scared. But yet, quite honestly, you should be buying on red days and selling on green days. But most retail investors do the opposite, and that's why they lose money.
All right. Well, before we let you go, did you want to share with the viewers obviously, like I said, people should do their own due diligence. But if they're interested in any of these companies that you've talked about, First Mining Finance, Silver One Resources, and First Majestic Silver, could you tell them the ticker symbols they should look for?
Yeah, the symbol for First Majestic is easy, just AG on New York. Best symbol there is for a silver company, as far as I'm concerned. the symbol in Canada, if people care, is FR. And for First Mining Finance, the Canadian symbol is FF, and the U.S. symbol is FFMGF. And for Silver One, the Canadian symbol is SVE, and the U.S. symbol is not yet on the QX. I understand it's being upgraded, so it's currently just on the pink sheets, which may make it difficult for some people. But the current symbol is SLVRF, and the company's told me that they hope to have their upgraded listing on the QX or QB sometime in the next 2 months.
All right. Well, Keith Neumeyer, thank you once again for joining us. Any last thoughts you'd like to leave with our viewers, and where can our viewers find you online?
Well, I'm on Twitter. I don't do a lot of tweets, but you can find me on Twitter. It's just at Keith_Neumeyer, Neumeyer. And I guess, my final comment is just, be patient. These markets are extremely volatile. We're going into a very volatile period with the U.S. elections. There's constant talk of what the Fed is going to do with interest rates, which, which gyrates these markets all over the place. So, try to, sometimes when you buy a stock, sometimes you just have to look away and ignore the daily moves, because they can drive people crazy. But, pick good management teams is the number one thing to do, and it's just, and be patient.